My name is Rick Petherbridge, and I'm here to give you an update of the second week of the French Open. And let's start with the men's draw. And for those of you that saw my podcast last week, you know that I've already chosen 3 players that I think are favorites, and I'm feeling pretty confident about those 3 players. So let's take a look at how they've done during the first week and how they're looking in terms of making it to the French Open final. So my first favorite was Djokovic, and we talked a little bit about him. He has 17 Grand Slams. He hasn't lost a match this year. He was defaulted at the US Open, but I don't consider that a loss. He hasn't lost a set so far at the French Open. So he's still my favorite. He's the one that I expect to win the French Open. Let's go through the reasons why I think I favor him over both Thiem and Nadal. First of all, I think he has the better draw. He's on the opposite side of the draw from Thiem and Nadal, so he won't have to play them in the semifinal. If things go as planned, his semifinal match would be against Tsitsipas. He has a 3-2 career advantage over Tsitsipas. He's never lost a final to Tsitsipas, and he's never lost a match on clay to Tsitsipas. So looking at who he has to play to get to the final, I think he clearly has the easier draw. As we talked about, there's some other factors that I think are also important. First of all, there's the weather. It's definitely colder. The conditions are a little slower than they normally are in May when this event is played. And I think that also gives a slight advantage to Djokovic, who hits the ball a little flatter than Nadal and also has a little bit better ball placement, which makes it easier for him to hit winners under these cold conditions than a player like Nadal. And then, of course, there's also the fact that I think he's more match tough than Nadal. He's had a great year. He won the Australian Open. He won the Masters in Cincinnati. He won the Masters in Rome. His confidence is high. As you can see, he hasn't lost a set yet at the French Open. And for all of those reasons, he's my pick to win the French Open. So let's move on to my second pick, and that's Dominic Thiem, who's also a favorite here. He just won the US Open. And I know a lot of you are saying, how can you pick Dominic Thiem over Rafael Nadal, who's the king of clay, who's won 12 French Opens, who has 18 Grand Slams? And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, I think you might be surprised if you look at a head-to-head against Thiem and Nadal since 2018, and I use that because I think Dominic Thiem raised the level of his play in 2018, and he's sort of a different player since then. They've played 7 times. Thiem's won 3 of those matches. Nadal's won 4 of those matches. So they've played very evenly during the last 2 years. I think Thiem has improved more during the last 2 years than Nadal has. I think he has a lot of confidence coming off of the US Open win. And also, I think that the conditions favor his game a little bit more. He hits the ball a little bit bigger. He hits the ball a little flatter than Nadal does. So for all of those reasons, I'm picking Thiem as my second favorite. I will say that when you look at how he did, he had a tough match today. It was a 5-set match. He won the first 2 sets against Gaston. He lost the next 2 sets and then came back in the 5th set and won 6-3. Other than that, all of his matches have been fairly routine. And I don't think that one 5-set match is going to impact him a lot in terms of the 3 matches that he has left. And then, of course, my third favorite is Rafael Nadal, the king of clay. He's won 18 slams in his career. He's won 12 French Opens. So normally he would be the favorite in this event. The only reason why I have him as my third favorite is that he hasn't played a lot this year. He didn't play the US Open. He lost at Rome, the Masters event in Rome, which was the warm-up to the French. He lost to Schwartzman. If you look at how he's done so far in the French, he's won pretty routinely in straight sets, although he hasn't played anybody really good. And so I think, you don't know how well he's playing or the level of his match or his tennis right now until he plays a really good player. As far as I'm concerned, until he plays someone of the caliber of Thiem or Djokovic, even though he's been winning these matches fairly easily, we just don't know. And also we haven't seen him in a situation where he's had to play a close match, right? Where he gets down, he loses a set, or struggles a little bit. And again, because he hasn't played many matches, those are issues that we'll just have to see how he handles that situation. But he's, again, my third favorite, and he's got a tough draw. Let's be honest. He's going to play Sinner in his next match. For those of you who don't know, Jason Sinner is a 19-year-old player, probably the best of the younger players under 20 years old. He's had a great French Open. In fact, he's played a much tougher draw than Nadal has. He beat David Goffin in the first round, and he just beat Zverev. So he's actually had probably the two best wins of any of the players that are left in the draw. And I'm really curious about that match, right? Sinner and Nadal have never played before. Of course, Nadal's going to be a huge favorite. Sinner's a 19-year-old kid who hasn't been in this situation before. Playing Nadal in a quarterfinal obviously is a very intimidating thing to have to do. But I think this is going to be a tough match. And I think that I don't think Sinner will beat Nadal, but I think he'll give him a tough match. And then when I look at the rest of his draw, it's tough, right? He's going to have to play Thiem in the semifinal. And if he beats Thiem, he's going to have to play Djokovic in the final. That's about as tough a draw as you can get. So if he wins this French, he will have definitely earned it. Although he hasn't really played any tough opponents so far in the first week of the Open. Okay, so those are my three favorites. And I'd like to go on and talk about some players that I talked about in my last podcast. I called them players to watch. The first one is Tsitsipas, Stefanos Tsitsipas. He had a disappointing US Open. He lost a very close 5-set match to Coric. He had, I believe, 8 match points. It was a match that he should have won, but lost. And so I was curious to see how he would rebound from that situation in the French, whether he would come back even harder and tougher, or if he would sort of lose a little confidence because of what happened in his loss to Coric. And he's proven to be a mentally tough player. He has had a couple of close matches, but he's made it through. And it is likely in my mind that he'll play Djokovic in the semifinal. Let's talk about that match. If he does play Djokovic in the semifinal, Djokovic does have a 3-2 career edge over Tsitsipas, and he has never lost to Tsitsipas in a final and has never lost to him on clay. So I would say that Djokovic is clearly the favorite in that. But again, this would be an opportunity for us to see just exactly what Tsitsipas is made of. He's a very young, very talented player, has a beautiful one-handed backhand, and he hasn't up to this date made it to a semifinal or a final of a Grand Slam event, and he's definitely ready to do that. He's an extremely talented player. I believe that he will win Grand Slam in the future, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles a semifinal against Djokovic, and if he's able to rise to the occasion and really push Djokovic or not. So I'm really looking forward to that, assuming that Tsitsipas is able to get to the semifinal. Another player that we talked about in my last podcast as a player to watch is Schwartzman, and he is a great clay court player. A lot of people would rank him just behind Nadal as the second best sort of clay court specialist. He is extremely fit. He has played really well in this French Open. Of course, people that watch the Masters events in Rome know that Schwartzman was able to beat Nadal in the quarterfinal and then lost to Djokovic in the final. So he has shown that it wasn't a fluke what happened at Rome, that he is one of the top, 4 or 5 players on clay and a real threat to win the French Open. If you're a shorter player, you have to root for Schwartzman, who I believe is 5'7". And I just think you have to be so fit, you have to be so strong, you have to be so mentally tough when you have that size deficit to win. And it's just, you don't have the big serve, you don't get the easy points that some of the other players do. You just have to work harder. And there's plenty of players that have been able to do that, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how far Schwartzman is able to go in this draw. I also want to go back and talk about a couple of American players that were very impressive in this French Open. There's a player, Sebastian Corda. He's 20 years old. He came into the French Open ranked 213 in the world. I certainly didn't expect him to get past the first round. I don't think many people did. He made it to the 4th round before losing to Nadal. And of course, losing to Nadal on clay is no shame. But it's very impressive that he was able to have this kind of result at a Grand Slam event. He's 20 years old. Of course, some of you will remember his father, Peter Corda, and him beating Pete Sampras at the Australian Open. So he's got some championship genes in his background, and it's just exciting for us Americans. We've waited a long time. I think it was 2003, the last time Andy Roddick won the US Open. So it's been a long drought for American players, and it's nice to see a 20-year-old player have this kind of result, get to the 4th round, and hopefully he will have a great career and he'll continue to improve. He's certainly somebody to watch. And of course, the other American that I talked about was Taylor Fritz. He's 22 years old. He made it to the 3rd round. A very solid, respectable performance on clay, which is not his strongest surface, but he's clearly an all-court player. And it's nice to see 2 young players who clearly have very bright futures that are Americans, and looking forward to seeing how much they improve and whether either of them can get routinely into the top 10 and then at some point win a Grand Slam event. I'm always rooting for the American players. Okay, so that's my preview of the second week of the French Open. We've seen some really, really good matches, really competitive matches. We've also seen a lot of upsets. It is really good to see that they're having 1,000 spectators being allowed to go into the event. As someone who loves to watch tennis and loves to go to some of the bigger events, I'm hoping that the experience of having and allowing 1,000 spectators in will begin so that other events like the Australian Open coming up in January will be able to allow even more spectators, and that in the near future, we'll get back to a time when we can all have the opportunity to watch the best tennis at the biggest locations. All right, that's it for now.